The boarding gate at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport buzzed with chatter, rolling suitcases, and the faint smell of coffee. Among the crowd stood Livia Brown, clutching her ticket so tightly that the edges were crumpled. It was her first ever flight, and her stomach twisted like a pretzel. She'd memorized every YouTube video about how to stay calm on a plane, but now standing in line, none of those tips mattered. Her hands were shaking, her throat dry. "You've got this," she whispered to herself. "It's just a big bus in the sky." Right? Moments later, she stepped inside the aircraft, a sleek Delta jet heading straight for New York City, the place where her new life was supposed to begin. She found her seat in business class, thanks to her new company's travel voucher. The leather seat gleamed under the cabin lights. She tried to look confident, but her heart was already pounding like a drum solo. Then, as she fought with her seatbelt pulling, twisting, and nearly strangling herself with the strap, a deep voice interrupted. "Excuse me, I think that's my seat." Livia froze. Slowly she looked up and forgot how to breathe. The man standing there was the definition of out of her league. Tall, sharp jawline, broad shoulders wrapped in a navy suit that looked custom-made. His Rolex glinted beneath the cuff of his crisp shirt. And those eyes, steel blue, calm, confident, the kind that belonged to someone who always got what he wanted. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she stammered, trying to unhook her backpack, which naturally had gotten tangled in the seatbelt she couldn't figure out. She tugged once, twice. On the third pull, the backpack slipped, her hand missed, and she bumped straight into his chest. Her elbow hit his water bottle. It toppled. Water splashed onto his sleeve. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, grabbing napkins, her cheeks burning. He laughed softly, that low, effortless laugh that carried both amusement and charm. "Don't worry about it," he said. "First time flying?" "That obvious," she muttered, forcing a smile. "Not at all," he teased. "Just a lucky guess." He sat beside her, scenting faintly of cedarwood and something dangerously expensive. As the flight attendant walked by, Livia pretended to read the safety card, though her mind was miles away. Then the plane engine roared. The captain's voice announced takeoff, and her fingers clutched the armrests so tight they turned white. "Relax," the man said calmly. "The chances of crashing are—" "Don't you dare." She snapped, covering her ears. He chuckled again, eyes sparkling. "All right, no statistics. You'll survive, I promise." But when the plane surged forward, Livia's brain panicked before logic could intervene. She reached for something, anything to hold on to, and her trembling hand landed somewhere it absolutely shouldn't have. For 2 horrifying seconds, she didn't even realize what she was gripping. Then she felt it warm, firm, and definitely not an armrest. Her eyes dropped. His eyes followed. Time stopped. "Oh my God," she whispered, yanking her hand away as if burned. "Oh my God, I didn't mean it was turbulence." "I usually," he said with a smirk. "People offer me coffee before getting that close." Her entire face turned scarlet. "Please stop talking. I'm just saying," he grinned. "You're already breaking records on your first flight." She buried her face in her hands. "God, just open the emergency door. Let me jump out." He laughed softly again, then leaned back, utterly composed, scrolling on his phone like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Livia's soul was halfway to the afterlife. Minutes crawled by. Her heartbeat finally slowed, but humiliation pulsed through her like caffeine. Then came the first bit of turbulence. The plane shuddered. Livia's stomach flipped. Without thinking, she unbuckled her belt, stumbled to her feet, and bolted down the aisle straight into the lavatory. Inside the cramped little space, she pressed her back to the door, breathing hard. What did I just do? She whispered, pacing in panic. First flight and I've already committed. Whatever that was. Outside, David Miller, the man she'd just accidentally assaulted, stood leaning against the wall, half amused, half curious. He waited a minute, then knocked lightly. "Hey, are you all right in there?" His voice sounded warm, concerned, maybe even sincere. But before she could answer, the plane jolted again, harder this time. The latch twisted, the door flew open, and David, who had been leaning against it, stumbled straight inside, colliding with her, in the tiny airless cubicle. Ah, what, oh my God. The space was barely enough for one person, let alone two. They froze, faces inches apart, the air thick with embarrassment and something else. She could feel his breath, his cologne, the heat between them. He steadied himself with one hand on the wall, the other accidentally landing on her waist. Her heart pounded so hard she swore he could hear it. "You know what?" she blurted out suddenly, panic and adrenaline mixing in a dizzy rush. "Just kiss me. If this plane goes down, I'd rather die happy." He blinked in surprise, then smiled, with pleasure. And just like that, he kissed her. A quick, chaotic, unbelievable kiss, somewhere between shock and electricity. Her hands gripped his shoulders, his arms tightened around her waist. The world outside disappeared. Until, of course, "Knock, knock, is everything okay in there?" The flight attendant's voice cut through the moment like thunder. They broke apart instantly, gasping eyes, wide hearts racing. David took a deep breath, fixed his tie, and whispered with a crooked grin, "Hell." That was unexpected. Livia could only nod, her cheeks burning. When they finally returned to their seats, she couldn't even look at him. And when the plane landed at JFK Airport, she grabbed her bag, ran down the aisle, and vanished into the crowd, vowing never to see that man again. But as David watched her disappear through the glass terminal, his lips curved into a faint smile. "Definitely," he murmured, "the most interesting passenger I've ever met." And somewhere deep down, both of them knew this was only the beginning. New York was louder than she'd imagined. The horns, the sirens, the rush of wind between glass towers, it all sounded like the city was alive, breathing, impatient. When Livia Brown stepped out of the taxi in front of her new apartment in Brooklyn Heights, the noise hit her like a wave. She stood there for a moment, clutching her two suitcases, staring up at the skyline glowing across the East River. Somewhere beyond those glittering towers, her future was waiting, and she had no idea it was already tangled with her past. Camila opened the door before Livia could even knock. "Girl, you made it." Her friend's voice was warm, loud, and exactly what Livia needed. The two women hugged so tightly that Livia almost forgot how terrified she'd been, 30,000 feet in the air. Almost. Inside the small but cozy apartment, they dropped onto the couch, laughing between breaths. "Okay," Camila said, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "You texted me mid-flight that you had a near-death experience. Spill it. Everything." Livia groaned, hiding her face in her hands. It wasn't near death. More like near humiliation. Camila leaned closer. "You didn't throw up on anyone, did you?" "Worse," Livia whispered. "I might have accidentally grabbed a stranger's." Camila's eyes widened. "No. Yes. Like they're..." Livia nodded, mortified. Camila gasped, then burst out laughing so hard the neighbors probably heard. "Oh my God. Only you, Livia. Only you could turn a plane ride into a romantic comedy disaster." "It's not romantic," Livia snapped, throwing a pillow at her. "It was awful. He was gorgeous, calm, rich-looking. Everything I'm not. And then I made it 10 times worse." Camilla wiped a tear from laughing. And you'll never see him again. That's the beauty of big cities. One mistake disappears into 8 million people. Livia smiled weakly. Yeah. Zero chance of ever crossing paths. Again. The next morning, New York didn't feel quite as forgiving. The sky was steel gray. The wind cut through her coat as she stood in front of Miller Tech Tower, the 25-story glass building glimmering like a mirror on Fifth Avenue. Her first day as a junior IT specialist. Her dream job. Her clean slate. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The lobby was enormous marble floors, a waterfall wall behind the reception desk, the kind of scent that said money and air conditioning. A receptionist smiled at her from behind a polished counter. Welcome to Miller Tech. Name please, Livia Brown, she answered, trying to sound confident. The receptionist checked her list. Yes, you're one of the new hires. Orientations on the 25th floor. Elevators to your left. Thank you, Livia said, gripping her bag as she walked toward the chrome elevator doors. Her reflection stared back her dark skin, her nervous eyes, the hint of determination she'd practiced in the mirror. Professional, she whispered to herself. Composed, focused, no disasters today. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime and a handful of new employees shuffled in. As it rose, she could feel her heartbeat climb with it. 23rd floor, 24th, 25. The doors opened to a hallway bathed in soft light and corporate calm. An assistant led the group into a sleek conference room with a long glass table. Livia took a seat near the end, straightened her blazer, and opened the welcome packet on the table. Her palms were already sweating. The door opened again, and then came that voice. Deep, measured, a voice she'd heard somewhere between terror and turbulence. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Miller Tech. Livia froze. No, 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 no. It couldn't be. Her head turned slowly, painfully slowly, and there he was. David Miller. The man from the plane. The one she'd made physical contact with in every wrong possible way. The one she'd kissed in an airplane bathroom. He stood at the head of the table, poised, in a charcoal suit, looking like sin, dressed as success. A billionaire in human form. Her lungs forgot how to work. Her heart slammed against her ribs, like it wanted to escape. David's eyes scanned the room calmly as he spoke about innovation cybersecurity and the company's mission. But then, halfway through his gaze, landed on her. Just for a second. And in that second, something flickered recognition. Surprise. Maybe even amusement. He paused. The faintest smile tugged at the corner of his mouth before he masked it behind professionalism. But Livia saw it. She felt it. He remembered her. When the presentation ended, the assistant began calling names for departmental introductions. Livia Brown, she announced. Livia stood so fast, she almost knocked over her chair. Every nerve in her body screamed, "Run!" But her legs moved her forward instead. David extended his hand, his expression calm, but his eyes dancing with mischief only she could see. Welcome to the team, Miss Brown. She looked at his hand, then his eyes, then his hand again. Finally, she shook it. Her pulse spiked. His grip was firm, his skin warm, familiar. It's an honor, she managed to say. The honor's mine, he replied, holding her hand, just a heartbeat longer than necessary. She pulled away, forcing a polite smile. Thank you, sir. Please, he said softly, so only she could hear, no need for sir. You've already called me plenty of other things mid-flight. Her face went crimson. Excuse me. But he'd already turned away smoothly, continuing introductions like nothing had happened. When the session ended, she practically bolted from the room, her heart racing. She reached the hallway, leaned against the wall, and exhaled. Of all the CEOs in New York, she muttered it had to be him. Her phone buzzed. A text from Camila. "How's the first day? Tech Queen Livia," typed back quickly. "Remember the plane guy? Yeah. He's my boss." Camila's reply came instantly. "What girl? That's not a job. That's a Netflix series waiting to happen." Livia slid her phone into her pocket and tried to collect herself, but the rest of the day didn't make it easier. Every time she passed someone in a tailored suit, she flinched. Every time she heard footsteps echoing in the hallway, her heart skipped. By late afternoon, she finally relaxed at her new desk in the IT department until a familiar shadow appeared at the door. David leaned casually against the frame, a folder in hand. Miss Brown settling in. "Okay?" She spun around in her chair. Yes. Perfectly fine, Mr. Miller." He nodded. "Good. Just wanted to check on my newest team member." He glanced around the room, then back at her. "And to make sure the chairs are comfortable." Livia blinked. "The chairs." He gave that same faint smirk. "Yes. Ergonomics are important. Wouldn't want anyone straining themselves." Her brain short-circuited. "The chairs are fine, sir." "Excellent," he said, still looking at her far too long before turning away. "If you need anything, my office is just upstairs." As he walked down the hall, one of her new co-workers, Lucas, raised an eyebrow. "That was weird." "You have no idea," Livia murmured. That night, back in her apartment, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, every accidental spark that shouldn't have existed. The city hummed outside, restless and alive, but all she could hear was that voice, deep calm, teasing her somewhere between memory and madness. She pressed a pillow over her face and groaned. "No, no, no, no. This is not happening." But it was. Because in a corner office high above Fifth Avenue, David Miller stood by his window, the city lights reflecting off his glass of whiskey. A smile ghosted his lips as he remembered her stunned expression. "Small world," he whispered, "and getting smaller." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled over the city, a quiet warning that whatever had started 30,000 feet in the air was about to crash straight into both their lives. Rain streaked across the windows of MillerTech Tower the next morning, tracing slow silver lines down the glass, like the city itself was exhaling. Livia sat at her desk, eyes fixed on her computer screen, pretending to focus on code that wouldn't stop blurring. Every few minutes, she glanced toward the hallway, half expecting that tall, calm, impossibly composed man to appear again. He didn't. Not yet. It should have been a relief. Instead, it only made her more anxious. Around her, the IT department hummed with quiet concentration. The faint tapping of keyboards, the occasional whir of a printer, the soft murmur of tech jargon. It was oddly soothing. Livia took a deep breath and forced herself to focus on her project. She was here to work, not to relive an accidental mid-air romance that should have stayed 30,000 feet above the ground. Still, his voice lingered like a song she couldn't stop humming. That deep, deliberate tone, the way he said her name, Miss Brown, as if he were tasting the syllables. She shook her head, irritated at herself. "Get a grip, girl," she muttered. "Talking to your code again, Lucas." Her coworker leaned on the edge of her desk with a grin. "That's step one of becoming one of us. Step two is giving up on sleep." She laughed, grateful for the distraction. "I'm already halfway there." Before he could reply, a soft chime echoed from the intercom. "Livia Brown, please report to the executive floor. Mr. Miller would like to see you." The room fell quiet for half a second, then filled with not-so-subtle whispers. "Ooh," someone murmured. "The boss already knows her by name." Livia's stomach dropped. "It's probably about work," she said quickly, though her voice betrayed her nerves. She smoothed her blazer, trying to look professional, but her hands trembled slightly as she stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The air grew still. She watched the floor numbers climb 10, 12, 15, 18, and her reflection in the chrome panel stared back, eyes wide, lips pressed together, heart somewhere near her throat. When the elevator chimed open on the executive floor, it felt like stepping into another world. The carpet was thicker, the silence heavier. The city stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, like a living painting. His assistant, a woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, motioned her forward. "Mr. Miller is expecting you." Livia nodded, wiped her palms on her skirt, and stepped inside. David Miller stood with his back to her, gazing out at the skyline. The light from the gray sky washed over him, turning the edges of his suit to silver. He turned slowly when she entered, and that faint, knowing smile curved across his lips. "Miss Brown." Her heart stuttered. "Mr. Miller." "Relax," he said, motioning toward a chair. "You look like I'm about to fire you. I just didn't expect to be summoned here." Summoned. His smile deepened. "I'm not a king, Livia." She blinked. "I didn't say, but I don't mind the comparison." He sat down behind his desk, the picture of composed power. "I called you here because I reviewed your system logs from last night. You made an interesting change to our security architecture." Her heart sank. Was there a problem? "Quite the opposite," he said, eyes glinting. "You found a vulnerability my senior engineers missed, and you fixed it without permission." She hesitated. "I just wanted to protect the system. The new patch wasn't stable, so You took initiative," he finished for her. "Something rare in this company." Livia exhaled softly. "I hope I didn't overstep." "You did," he said, standing. "But I like people who overstep for the right reasons." He walked closer, too close. The faint scent of cedarwood hit her again. He handed her a file, their fingers brushing for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "I'm assigning you to a new internal project," he said. "Confidential. You'll report directly to me." Her brain went blank. "Directly to you? Unless that's a problem." She shook her head quickly. "No, of course not." He studied her for a moment, expression unreadable. "Good. You start tomorrow." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "And Miss Brown." She looked back. "Next time you storm into my office, this nervous breathe first. I don't bite." Her cheeks flushed. "That's debatable." He laughed quietly, and the sound followed her all the way to the elevator. That night she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts ran in circles. Why her out of everyone? It couldn't just be about that code fix. She told herself he was simply recognizing talent, but deep down she knew there was something else behind those calm blue eyes, something he wasn't saying. The next morning she arrived earlier than she ever had before, and found his office already lit. The door was slightly ajar. She knocked softly. "Come in." He was at his desk, sleeves rolled up, typing on a laptop. The city outside was still waking up, gold sunlight painting the tops of the buildings. "You're early," he said without looking up. "You too." He smiled faintly, eyes still on the screen. Perks of insomnia. She hesitated. "So, what exactly is this project?" He gestured for her to sit. "You'll be auditing internal security systems, especially those connected to our government contracts. It's sensitive, high-stakes work. I need someone I can trust. Her breath caught. Why me? He looked at her, then really looked, and something in his gaze softened. Because you don't fake things, Miss Brown. Not your mistakes, not your courage. She swallowed hard. That's an interesting reason. Honesty is rare in this building, he said. I'd like to keep at least one person around who has it. For a moment the room felt smaller, quieter. The city outside might as well not have existed. Then mercifully his phone buzzed. He answered, turning away. His voice shifted into that controlled CEO tone she'd first heard at orientation. Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and looked back at her. I have a meeting downtown. Use my office while I'm gone if you need quiet. She blinked. Your office? Yes. Try not to hack the stock market while I'm away. He winked and left before she could respond. The moment the door closed, she exhaled. The air still smelled faintly like him coffee and cologne. His desk was immaculate, except for a photo frame lying face down. Curiosity tugged at her. She shouldn't. She really shouldn't. But she did. She lifted the frame. The photo showed a younger David standing beside a woman with pale hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A wedding photo. Her pulse quickened. He was married or had been. The thought hit her harder than she expected. A voice behind her broke the silence. You shouldn't snoop around my desk, Miss Brown. She froze. The photo slipped from her fingers, landing softly on the carpet. She turned. David was standing in the doorway, coat slung over his shoulder, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I thought you had a meeting, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It got canceled. He stepped closer, picking up the photo, his tone unreadable. Curiosity can be dangerous here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't, he said quietly. But next time ask me instead of the frame. Her throat went dry. Ask you what? He set the photo down, eyes meeting hers. Dark, intense, unguarded for the first time. Whether I'm still married. The air between them tightened, the hum of the city fading to silence. Are you? She asked softly. His jaw flexed. Not anymore. Before she could say another word, the phone on his desk rang again, sharp, cutting through the moment like a blade. He looked away, answering curtly. Yes, send them up. When he hung up, the warmth in his eyes was gone. We'll continue this later, Miss Brown. You should go. She left the office, heart-pounding confusion, mixing with something far more dangerous. Curiosity, attraction, maybe both. As the elevator doors closed, she saw his reflection through the glass wall, David, standing alone staring down at that photo, fingers tightening around the frame until the glass cracked. And somewhere deep inside her chest, she knew she'd just touched something she wasn't supposed to. The storm that rolled over Manhattan that evening felt electric, like the city itself was waiting for something to happen. Rain lashed against the glass facade of Miller Tech Tower, and thunder cracked somewhere over the Hudson. Inside, the hum of servers echoed faintly through the 25th floor. Rows of monitors glowed in the half-dark painting, the IT room in hues of icy blue. Livia was still there long after everyone else had gone home. Her reflection flickered across the black glass of her screen eyes, heavy but sharp. She'd spent the last 2 days drowning in code, debugging the internal firewall David had assigned her to audit. He'd been distant since that moment in his office, the photograph, the near confession, and she couldn't stop thinking about the way his fingers had tightened around that frame. She tried to bury it under lines of code, but it crept back between keystrokes. His voice, his stare, that tension in his jaw, when he said, "Not anymore." The elevator chimed softly behind her. She didn't look up. She assumed it was Lucas or the night janitor. But the footsteps that followed were too deliberate, too measured. Still here. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. His voice again. She turned. David stood at the edge of the room, rain speckled across his coat, his tie loosened. The city lights framed him like a silhouette of calm amid chaos. "I could ask you the same thing," she said. He gave a faint smile. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd check on my favorite insomniac." She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the smile tugging at her lips. "If you're here to micromanage, you'll be disappointed. Everything's under control." "I'm sure it is," he said, stepping closer, his voice lower now. "But the network's been acting strange since 8 o'clock. Unusual outbound traffic from one of the government servers." Her heart picked up. "You think it's an attack? I think we're about to find out." He moved beside her, his sleeve brushing hers as he leaned in to study the monitor. For a moment, their proximity made the air thicken. She caught the faint scent of rain and cedarwood again. Then the system beeped. The red alert flashed across her screen. "Unauthorized access detected." "Oh no," she whispered, fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're inside the encrypted layer. That shouldn't be possible." David's calm expression hardened. "How bad?" "Bad," she said, eyes darting between data streams. "They're trying to pull classified files from the federal contract. Someone's using a remote mirror system." He cursed under his breath. "Can you stop it?" Livia's mind went into overdrive. The world narrowed to numbers, protocols, firewalls. Her pulse synced with the rhythm of the keyboard. "If I isolate the central node, I can trap them inside a loop, like locking a thief in a room with infinite doors." "Do it." She worked faster, tracing IP trails, rerouting data through decoy servers. The sound of rain outside blurred into static. The air conditioner hummed like a low heartbeat. Sweat trickled down her temple, but she didn't notice. Her entire being was code and focus. "They're good," she muttered. "They keep adapting. Whoever's doing this knows our architecture inside out." David frowned. "That narrows the suspect list." A burst of static filled the speakers. Then a voice, distorted and robotic, crackled through the system. "You can't stop what's already begun." Livia froze. What the David's eyes darkened. "They're taunting us. You hide secrets in your towers," the voice continued. "But even the cleanest hands leave fingerprints, Mr. Miller." The sound cut off. Silence slammed into the room. Livia looked up at him, her pulse still racing. "They know your name." "Let them," he said coldly. "They won't have mine for long." She took a breath, forcing her focus back. "I've got an idea. If I trigger a false routing loop, I can make them think they've stolen everything while actually downloading corrupted junk." His eyes softened just slightly. "Show me." She typed a sequence of commands, the glow from the monitor lighting her face. 3, 2, 1. The red alerts blinked. Then one by one the intrusion threads collapsed. The server status bar turned green. She leaned back, finally breathing again. "Got them." David exhaled a quiet laugh, the kind that sounded like relief, disguised as admiration. "You just saved Miller Tech." "Let's not exaggerate," she said, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "No," he replied. "You did." The lights flickered momentarily, throwing them into shadow. When they steadied, his eyes were still on her. Not in the way a boss looks at an employee, but in the way a man looks at something or someone he wasn't supposed to want. Livia stood, breaking the spell. "We should run diagnostics, make sure the system's clean." He nodded, stepping back. "You handle that. I'll call the board in the morning." As she turned to leave, he spoke again, quieter this time. "Thank you, Livia." She paused at the door. "Just doing my job." He smiled faintly. "That's what everyone says, before they become irreplaceable." She left before she could think of a response. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. The city looked softer, blurred at the edges as she walked down Fifth Avenue with her laptop bag slung over one shoulder. The adrenaline was still coursing through her. She should have felt proud, but instead, she felt unsettled. That voice, "You hide secrets in your towers," echoed in her head. By the time she reached her apartment, it was past midnight. Camilla was asleep on the couch, an empty pizza box beside her. Livia dropped her bag, poured herself a glass of water, and stared out the window at the skyline. Somewhere in one of those towers, David was probably doing the same thing, alone, awake, and haunted by secrets she didn't yet understand. The next morning, the office buzzed with whispers. News of the cyber attack had spread, though most didn't know how close it had come to disaster. The PR team had already spun the story into routine maintenance. When Livia arrived, a dozen heads turned toward her. Lucas grinned from across the room. "Rumor says the CEO himself stayed all night in IT. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" She shot him a look. "Rumor's wrong," he smirked. "Uh-huh. Sure." Before she could reply, David's assistant appeared at the door. "Miss Brown, Mr. Miller wants to see you. Now." Every conversation in the room stopped. Her stomach tightened. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice steady. When she stepped into his office, he was standing by the window again, sunlight bouncing off the glass towers outside. But his posture was different, stiff, guarded. "Close the door," he said. She did. He turned to face her, a file in hand. "You were right. The hacker was inside our system, but they weren't after data." She frowned. "Then what?" He tossed a printed page onto the desk. It was an email, one she recognized immediately. Her name was in the header, sent from her company account. Her blood ran cold. "That's not mine. I know," he said, "but whoever did this wants it to look like it is." The message read, "Full server access codes attached. Transfer complete." Her hands trembled. "They're framing me. Looks that way. Do you believe it?" His eyes met hers. "If I did, you wouldn't be standing here." The tension broke just enough for her to breathe, but only barely. He walked around the desk close enough that she could see the faint lines of exhaustion at the corner of his eyes. "I need you to help me find out who did this. Quietly. No one else can know." She hesitated. "Why me?" "Because I trust you," he said simply. Something in his tone made her heart stumble. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed. The calm CEO mask cracked for just a second, replaced by something darker. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the phone toward her. The message on the display made her skin crawl. "Unknown number. You can't protect her forever, David." The room fell silent except for the rain beginning again outside. And for the first time since she met him, Livia saw fear flicker in David Miller's eyes. The rain outside hadn't stopped for 2 days. It came in waves, sometimes soft, like whispered secrets, sometimes violent, as if the sky itself was trying to wash away Manhattan's sins. From the 25th floor of Miller Tech Tower, the city looked like a living circuit board, thousands of windows pulsing with light, reflecting in the slick black streets below. Livia stood by the glass, her arms crossed, watching the reflection of her own face flicker between the storm and the skyline. Behind her, David's office was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional vibration of his phone on the desk. The message from that unknown number still lingered on the screen. You can't protect her forever, David. Her stomach had been in knots since reading it. Who would send that? She asked softly. David didn't answer right away. He was pacing near his desk coat, draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up, tension in every movement. Someone who knows too much, he said, finally, his tone quiet, deliberate. And someone who wants us to know. They're watching. She turned to face him. Us. This feels personal. They mentioned her. That's me, isn't it? His eyes lifted sharp and dark. Yes. She swallowed hard, feeling her pulse climb. So, whoever hacked the system, this isn't just corporate espionage. David shook his head slowly. No, it's bigger and uglier. He walked to his desk, grabbed a tablet, and pulled up a list of IP traces Livia had tracked during the breach. You rerouted them through decoys that night, but one address reappeared. It's local. Her brow furrowed. Local. You mean here in the city? Closer than that. He tapped the screen, zooming in on the digital map. The blinking dot hovered over the east side, mere blocks from Millertech Tower. Livia stepped closer, scanning the data. Her heart raced as she recognized a subnet tag. That's our own internal network. He looked at her. Exactly. Someone inside the company. The words hit her like a cold slap. She took a step back, the realization sinking in. You're saying it's an inside job? David nodded grimly. And whoever it is, just tried to use your name to cover their tracks. The room went still. She could hear the rain again, relentless against the glass. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Livia broke the silence. So, what do we do? David's gaze softened slightly, just enough to crack through the steel. We find them before they destroy you. She met his eyes. Us, she corrected quietly, before they destroy us. He held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them, a flicker of trust, forged from danger. Then his phone buzzed again, breaking the moment. He picked it up, scanning the screen. The board's demanding an update. They're panicking about the breach. Do they know about the message, she asked. Not yet, he replied. And they won't. If they sense weakness, they'll turn it into blood. His words carried a quiet bitterness, the kind that comes from years of boardroom wars and cold betrayals. Livia suddenly realized just how lonely it must be at his level, how the higher he climbed, the fewer people he could trust. She took a slow breath. Then let me help. I can trace the internal access logs, run packet captures. If someone used my credentials, there'll be digital residue somewhere. Even a ghost leaves footprints. A corner of his mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. Remind me never to underestimate you. She sat down at his desk and began typing, her fingers steady despite the storm outside. The monitors came alive with scrolling code. David leaned against the edge of the desk, watching her work, his expression unreadable but intent. After several minutes, she froze. There. Someone accessed the network remotely, using a duplicate session ID, mine. He leaned forward. When last night, she said. At 11:47 p.m., his jaw tightened. You were home. I was asleep, she whispered. Whoever did this logged in from inside the building. A chill ran down her spine. That means they were here. The office lights flickered. For a heartbeat, the entire floor went dark. Only the monitors glowed. Then a low mechanical hum returned, and the lights flicked back on. Livia's pulse spiked. Did you see that David was already moving? Stay here. Wait. Where are you going? Server room, he said, grabbing his access card. If someone's on site, they'll go for the main terminal. Before she could argue, he was gone, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Livia waited for exactly 10 seconds before grabbing her laptop and following. The hallway was dim, lit only by the emergency strips along the floor. Her heels echoed softly as she descended the stairwell toward the basement level. The server room was cold, almost freezing. Rows of black towers lined the space like silent soldiers. The hum of thousands of fans filled the air. In the far corner, a faint light blinked from a console. David was there, crouched beside it. "David?" she called quietly. He turned just as a sharp metallic click echoed through the room. "Get down!" he shouted. Before she could react, a spark exploded from one of the consoles. The lights flickered again. The smell of burnt circuits filled the air. Someone had rigged a short-circuit trigger designed to fry the system remotely. Livia ducked behind a row of servers, clutching her laptop. The air crackled with energy. David shouted over the noise. "They're trying to wipe everything. Backup drive, security footage, everything." She crawled toward another terminal, her fingers shaking as she connected her laptop. "I can reroute the power flow. Give me 10 seconds. He tore open a control panel, flipping switches manually. Sparks burst again. 9 seconds. 8. She typed furiously, sweat dripping down her temple. 5. The monitors went black. 4. The hum of the servers faltered, then stabilized. 3. She hit one final key. Now the backup grid roared to life. The lights steadied. The sound of power flooded back into the room. David exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You did it." She stood brushing dust from her coat. "We both did." He looked at her, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Then the security camera above them blinked, red recording again. "Smile," she said, half smirking. "We're on film." But David didn't smile. He was staring past her at a small red envelope taped to the server door. Livia turned, her breath caught. The envelope was glossy wet from condensation. No stamp, no address. Just one word scrawled across it in black ink: Livia. He took it down carefully, opening it under the flickering light. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, printed from a security feed. It showed her, sitting at her desk, late at night, alone. The timestamp in the corner read, "Last night, 11:47 p.m. Her voice trembled. That's when they logged in." David looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Whoever's doing this isn't just after the company. They're watching you." Livia's skin went cold. From somewhere deep in the building, a soft beep echoed, like an elevator arriving. Both turned toward the sound. David's jaw clenched. "We're not alone down here." The camera light above them blinked once, twice, then went out. The power cut again, leaving them in absolute darkness. Darkness swallowed the entire server floor. The hum of machines died, leaving a silence so sharp that Livia could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her chest. The emergency lights failed to kick in. Whoever had cut the power knew exactly what they were doing. Somewhere behind the maze of black server towers, a faint metallic sound echoed, a door handle maybe, or something being dragged across the floor. "David," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here," came his low reply from a few feet away. The calmness in his tone didn't match the tension in the air. "Stay still." Her fingers clutched the edge of a server cabinet. She could feel the cold steel beneath her palms, the static still lingering in the air from the power surge. A soft creak followed a footstep, deliberate, slow, too heavy to be hers or his. Her eyes strained against the dark, searching for movement. David's silhouette appeared beside her. "We have to get out of here," he murmured. How the elevators, before she could finish, a flash of light burst across the room, a security flashlight sweeping the aisles. Livia froze. The beam cut across the rows, pausing just long enough to catch her reflection in one of the glass server panels. David grabbed her wrist, pulling her down behind a terminal. They crouched together, breath shallow, her shoulder pressed against his chest. The beam passed over them again, then moved away. Whoever was holding that light wasn't searching randomly. They were moving with precision, like someone who knew the layout. The steps grew closer, slow and careful, until they stopped only a few feet from where they hid. Livia's pulse thundered in her ears. She could feel David's breath near her temple, steady, controlled. Then a sound, the faint click of a lighter. A small flame flickered, illuminating a glimpse of a man's face. Pale, gaunt eyes, hollow. He looked around, scanning the rows, then muttered something under his breath before turning back toward the exit. The flashlight beam disappeared with him. The door clicked shut. Livia exhaled shakily, her body trembling from adrenaline. Who was that? David didn't answer immediately. He stood moving toward the door, checking the lock. Maintenance staff don't come down here after hours, he said more to himself than to her. And that wasn't security. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her knees. Then, who, before she could finish, the emergency lights flickered to life, dim but steady, bathing the room in a sterile bluish glow. The air felt charged again, as though the building itself was holding its breath. David turned toward the central console where the red envelope had been. It was gone. Her stomach dropped. No, it was right there. Whoever came in took it, he said quietly. But why leave it in the first place? Why not just destroy it? David's jaw tightened, because it wasn't a threat. It was a message. Livia frowned. Then what's the message now? He met her eyes. That they can reach you and me anytime they want. The elevator whirred faintly back to life, the hum of the building returning as if nothing had happened. But both knew something had shifted. Someone inside MillerTech was playing a game neither of them fully understood. Back upstairs, the corridors of the 25th floor were empty. The city lights filtered through the glass walls, scattering across the floor in shards of gold and silver. It should have felt safe. It didn't. In David's office, Livia sat at the edge of the couch, still gripping her laptop. Her fingers trembled when she finally spoke. This is more than just corporate sabotage, isn't it? He didn't reply. He poured a glass of whiskey instead, his reflection fractured across the window. There are things about this company you don't know, he said finally, his voice low. Then tell me. He looked over his shoulder, meeting her eyes. MillerTech isn't just a tech firm. We work with defense contracts, intelligence systems, surveillance networks. There are billions of dollars worth of classified prototypes buried in our servers. Whoever's behind this. He paused, taking a breath. They're after something specific, and they're not afraid to get personal. She stared at him, realizing the full weight of what he was saying. And you think I'm the weak link? He shook his head, walking closer. No, I think you're the one person I can trust. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. For a brief second, all the fear, confusion, and exhaustion blurred into something else, something dangerous. David, she began. But before she could finish, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, frowning. It's from security. They've found something. Within minutes, they were in the surveillance room on the ground floor. The guard on duty, a middle-aged man named Ramirez, was visibly uneasy. Sir, you'll want to see this. He played back footage from the previous night, grainy black and white images from the lobby cameras. At 11:47 p.m., a figure entered through the side door, wearing a maintenance uniform and cap. The timestamp matched the moment of the breach. Freeze it, David said. The image paused. Livia leaned closer. The uniform was standard Millertech issue, but the person's face was partially obscured by the brim of the cap. Still, something about the posture, the slouched shoulders, the deliberate gait felt eerily familiar. "Can you zoom in?" she asked. Ramirez enlarged the frame. The figure's head tilted slightly toward the camera for a split second, enough to catch a glimpse of their jawline, their mouth. Livia's breath caught. "No, that's not possible." "What?" David asked. She shook her head, backing away from the screen. "It looks like Lucas, your coworker. He's been acting strange lately, asking questions about admin access, watching me work." David crossed his arms, expression unreadable. "We can't accuse him without proof." "I'm not accusing," she said quietly. "I'm saying it fits." The silence that followed was heavy. David finally nodded to Ramirez. "Keep this between us." As they stepped into the elevator, Livia stared at the doors, her reflection ghost-like against the steel. "If it is him, why me? Why frame me?" David looked at her, his voice soft, but sure. "Because you're the one person smart enough to stop him." The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage. The storm had eased, but the ground glistened under the dim lights. David's car waited near the exit. He turned to her. "You should go home. Get some rest." She hesitated. "And you?" "I'll stay," he said. "There's something I need to check." She nodded reluctantly, heading toward her car. But as she reached for the handle, something made her stop. A small folded note was wedged beneath the windshield wiper. She unfolded it with trembling hands. "You're looking in the wrong place, Livia. He's not who you think he is." Her breath hitched. She spun around, scanning the empty garage. Only the sound of dripping water echoed from the ceiling. Far across the lot, near a concrete pillar, a figure stood in the shadows, still watching. "David," she called out. No response. The figure turned slowly, stepping just close enough for the overhead light to catch a detail she couldn't mistake, an employee badge clipped to his chest. Then, without a word, he disappeared into the stairwell. Livia stood frozen, rainwater dripping from her hair, the note still clutched in her hand. And for the first time, she wasn't sure who she was supposed to be afraid of, the man in the shadows, or the one she was starting to fall in love with. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of New York dawn that blurred sky and glass into the same color. Livia barely slept. Her mind kept replaying the figure in the parking garage, that shadowed outline, the glint of the company badge, and the note that had burned into her memory. "He's not who you think he is." She sat at her kitchen counter, a half-drunk mug of coffee, cooling beside her laptop. Camila leaned against the counter, still in her robe, watching her with narrowed eyes. "You're pale," Camila said, "and you keep staring at that note, like it's going to confess something." Livia rubbed her temples. Maybe it already did. What does that even mean? She hesitated. "It means someone's trying to make me doubt him." Him. The billionaire boss with the smoldering eyes. Camila crossed her arms. "Girl, if this were one of those office thrillers you love watching, that's exactly how it starts. Rich guy, dark secret, smart woman in danger. Except this isn't a movie," Livia said, her voice trembling slightly. Camila leaned closer. "Isn't it? Look around. You've got the high-rise office, the mysterious hacker, the sexy CEO who looks at you like you're a secret he can't stop thinking about. I mean, come on." Livia cracked a tired smile. "You're impossible, and you're in denial." Camila set her coffee down, serious now. "You trust him?" The question lingered in the air, like smoke. Livia looked down at her hands, her fingers still ink-stained from scribbling notes all night. "I don't know." "Then find out," Camila said simply. "Don't wait for someone else to tell you who he is." By the time Livia reached Millertech Tower, the rain had stopped, but the city was still slick and gleaming. The glass doors reflected her like a ghost, walking into another version of herself. Inside, the usual morning hum felt off. People moved faster, whispering in corners, their faces tight. Something had happened. She caught sight of Lucas in the hallway, tired eyes, dark circles avoiding her gaze. The sight sent a chill through her. "Lucas," she called. He froze, then turned, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Livia." "Early start. Can we talk?" she asked. He hesitated. "Now's not a good time. Big mess in IT. Someone crashed the internal comms overnight." Her brow furrowed. "Another attack, maybe." He shrugged too casually. "Could be bad code. Could be sabotage. Who knows anymore?" He started to walk away, but she stepped in front of him. "Lucas, you were here late last night, weren't you?" His jaw flexed. "Why would you think that?" "Because someone was," she said softly. "Someone who used my login again." His gaze flickered just for a second before he smiled. "Careful, Livia. You sound paranoid. People start thinking that, and suddenly you're the problem." The elevator doors opened, and he slipped inside before she could reply. She watched the doors close, her heart pounding. When she reached David's office, he was already there, leaning against the window sleeves, rolled up phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, urgent. "No, I don't care what the board says. I'll handle it internally." He paused, jaw tightening. "Just make sure no one leaks it to the press." He hung up and turned toward her. For a moment, the sharpness in his expression softened. "You look like you didn't sleep." "Neither did you." He almost smiled. "You're right." Then his tone shifted. "Something happened last night. Our internal network logs were erased again, the backup drives this time. And there's more." He picked up a folder from his desk and handed it to her. Inside were printed screenshots, system login attempts, timestamps, encrypted IP trails. Her name was all over them. Livia's stomach twisted. This, again, David's gaze was steady. "You tell me." She looked up sharply. "You think I did this? I think you're in danger," he said evenly. "And whoever's doing this wants me to think it's you." She let out a shaky breath. "Then they're winning." David moved closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. I don't believe you're behind this, but the board does. And if we don't find proof soon, they'll push for an investigation. HR police the works." She swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" He leaned in, eyes intense. "We stop waiting for them to strike. We find them first." The way he said it, calm, absolute, sent a shiver down her spine. "You sound like you've done this before." His jaw tightened, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. "I've been through worse." She wanted to ask what that meant, but before she could, his intercom buzzed. Mr. Miller came, his assistant's nervous voice. "The board's here for the emergency meeting." He exhaled slowly. "Of course they are." Livia handed him back the folder. "Go. I'll start digging through the deleted logs." He hesitated. "You'll stay quiet about this?" She nodded. "You have my word." As soon as he left, she opened her laptop, pulling up the system's shadow logs, fragments of erased data that might still linger deep in the architecture. Minutes turned into an hour, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Finally, she found something, a string of hidden code buried beneath the firewall protocols. Her breath caught. It was a key, an access signature, and it wasn't hers. Her pulse quickened as she ran the trace. The system translated the code into a user tag, and her screen flashed with a single name. David Miller, admin, A1. Her mind spun. It didn't make sense. Unless the office door opened behind her. She slammed the laptop shut instinctively. David stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, expression unreadable. "You're still here." She forced a calm smile. "Just running diagnostics." He nodded slowly, stepping closer. "The boards decided to bring in federal oversight. Cyber division. They're not happy." Her voice was barely steady. "And what about you?" He studied her for a long moment. "I'm not happy either." The silence between them stretched. She could feel the weight of what she'd just seen pressing against her chest. He took another step toward her. "Livia, if you start doubting me now, they'll win." Her lips parted, but no words came. He stopped inches away, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You trust me, don't you?" Her throat went dry. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she asked quietly, "Who sent that first message?" "David. The one that said, 'You can't protect her forever.'" He blinked just once. A flicker of surprise or guilt crossed his face. Then his phone buzzed again. He glanced down, and the blood drained from his face. "What is it?" she asked. He turned the screen toward her. It was a live video feed from the building's basement security camera. In the frame was Lucas. He was standing in the server room holding a gun. And taped to the wall behind him was a red envelope. David's voice was barely a whisper. "He's not supposed to be there." Livia stared at the screen, her breath catching in her chest. "What does he want?" David didn't answer. His jaw clenched. His eyes darkened. "Stay here," he said, already moving toward the door. David, no. But he was gone before she could stop him, the elevator doors sliding shut behind him. Livia stood there, frozen, staring at the screen. The live feed flickered static, crackling through the image. For a split second, the camera angle shifted, and she saw not just Lucas, but someone else stepping out of the shadows behind him. Someone taller, broader, familiar. The feed cut to black. The elevator dropped in silence, the hum of the cables vibrating through David's spine like an echo of dread. The fluorescent lights flickered above him as the numbers descended. 10, 7, 4, B1. When the doors opened, the chill of the basement hit him, metallic cold and unnervingly still. The air smelled faintly of ozone and damp concrete, the kind of silence that made sound itself feel intrusive. He stepped out, shoes clicking softly against the floor, eyes fixed on the faint glow spilling from the server room at the end of the corridor. The light blinked intermittently red, white red, the pulse of the security feed syncing with his heartbeat. He pushed open the door. Lucas stood in the middle of the room exactly as the feed had shown. The gun in his hand gleamed under the flickering light, but his face wasn't wild or angry. It was calm. Too calm. His other hand held the red envelope, the same crimson paper that had haunted them for days. "Put the gun down, Lucas," David said, voice low but steady. Lucas smirked. "Funny. That's what your father said to me the night he died." David froze, his fingers tightening at his sides. "What did you just say?" Lucas took a slow step forward, the barrel of the gun never wavering. "You really thought I wouldn't find out? That you could bury everything under a new company name, a new mission, a new face of morality?" David's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about." Lucas snapped, his calm cracking for the first time. "You stole the prototype your father built with my brother, the one that could rewrite data signatures, the one that could make anyone disappear from the system. He died because you wanted to control it." David's voice lowered, cold and precise. "Your brother sold military software to foreign buyers. He betrayed everything my father built. He destroyed us all." Lucas laughed, a dry, broken sound. "And you covered it up. You called it an accident." You made sure the only person who could prove it was erased from every database in the country. David's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or grief. He chose his path, Lucas. Like I'm choosing mine now. The sound of the elevator doors broke the tension, a metallic chime, echoing through the basement. David's head turned sharply just as Livia stepped out, breathless, holding her laptop tight against her chest. Livia, go back upstairs, David ordered, voice clipped. But she didn't move. Her eyes darted from David to Lucas, then to the gun. What's happening? Lucas's lips curled into something, between a smile and a sneer. The truth, sweetheart. That's what's happening. Lucas, please, she said softly, stepping closer. You don't have to do this. Don't. David snapped, his voice sharp. Stay where you are. Listen to him, Lucas said. He's good at giving orders. Always has been. Especially when someone else pays the price. Livia's pulse raced. I don't understand. Lucas turned the gun toward her, not out of anger, but with a strange kind of calm finality. Of course you don't. You think he's the hero. The man who saved you from the storm, from the hackers, from the bad guys in the dark. But the truth is, he's the reason all of this started. David took a slow step forward. Lucas, don't move. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the servers and the rain whispering against the building's foundation. Livia's voice broke through the quiet, trembling but firm. If what you're saying is true, then let me see the proof. Lucas blinked, thrown off by her steadiness. Proof. She nodded. You said he erased everything, but nothing's ever really gone, not if you know where to look. She lifted her laptop slightly. I can find it. The original logs. The data your brother left behind. David's eyes narrowed. Livia. I'm done being the pawn in both your games, she said, meeting his gaze. You want the truth? So do I. Lucas hesitated, lowering the gun an inch. You can find it, I can try, she said, but not if you shoot someone before I do. He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped back, gesturing with the gun. Do it. She set her laptop on the nearest console and began typing, her fingers, trembling but sure. The screen filled with scrolling code. Layers of encryption peeled away one after another. Sweat slid down her temple. Behind her, David and Lucas stood like two shadows frozen in time. Then the screen flashed. A file name appeared. M Project Archive. Final log. Livia clicked it open. A video feed filled the screen, grainy, time-stamped years ago. A younger David stood beside an older man, his father, and another man who looked strikingly like Lucas. The audio crackled. If this goes public, we're done, Richard, the older man's voice said. You can't just bury this. You think I want this? He's selling our code to the Pentagon under false contracts. He'll kill the project before it's even finished. Then we expose him. No, we make it disappear. The video froze, mid-frame. David's father reaching toward the console. A flash of light and then static. Livia turned slowly. Lucas's gun hand trembled. He killed him, he whispered. You helped him cover it up. David shook his head, his voice hoarse. I was there, yes, but I didn't pull the trigger. Your brother sabotaged the servers. It triggered the explosion that killed them both. My father died trying to stop him. Lucas's eyes glistened. Liar. He raised the gun. Livia stepped between them. Lucas, stop. The world seemed to collapse into that one moment. The cold hum of the machines, the storm rumbling above the breath caught in her throat. Put it down, she pleaded. Please. He hesitated, eyes flicking between her and David. Then something behind her beeped her laptop, flashing another alert. Transmission sent. External destination detected. She turned sharply. What David's eyes widened. Livia stepped back. But before she could move, a blinding surge of light erupted from the server racks. The floor shuddered as the power grid blew, sending sparks across the room. The laptop crashed to the ground, screen shattering. Livia hit the floor. The air filled with smoke and the acrid scent of burnt wiring. She coughed, blinking through the haze. David's voice shouted her name somewhere nearby, but the sound was drowned by the roar of the emergency alarms. When the smoke cleared, Lucas was gone. The gun lay on the ground empty. David knelt beside her, pulling her up. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still dazed. "The files. They're gone." He exhaled. "Not all of them. You sent something before the system blew." She frowned, confused. "I didn't." He met her eyes, realization dawning in both of them at once. Someone else had. From the far corner of the room, a red light blinked once on a forgotten console. Then the monitors flickered back to life, displaying a single phrase across every screen. "The truth will find you." David stared at it, his face pale. "It's not over." Livia looked up at him, the reflection of the words burning in her eyes. "Then who's really behind this?" From the corridor, the faint echo of footsteps answered, slow, deliberate, growing louder. A figure appeared in the doorway, backlit by the flickering hallway lights. David's expression changed, shocked disbelief. The voice that followed was calm, deep, and chillingly familiar. "Miss me, son?" Livia's heart stopped. David's father, the man who was supposed to be dead, stepped into the room, smiling. And for the first time, David Miller looked truly afraid.